Now to Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed by police. Since his death, a movement to, quote, dismantle the police department as we know it has grown stronger. And it has the support of a majority of city council members. Special correspondent Fred DeSam Lazaro takes a look at what this might mean.
As fire and rage overwhelmed long stretches of the Lake Street business district late last month, Minneapolis City Councilor Alondra Cano says residents of her ward took matters into their own hands.
We're here at the Lake Street Council office,
trying to salvage what little they could. She live-streamed their efforts on Facebook.
We started with small buckets of water and throwing them at the building, and then finally the neighbors from the other block had access to an old fire hose and were able to open the fire hydrant there. Boom!
When they finally heard from law enforcement, Cano says, it was with flashbangs and tear gas, imposing the strict no exceptions curfew. She says such experiences have given swift rise to a movement and the slogan, defund the police. The sentiment is plastered across the city, and a veto-proof majority of the city council committed itself to, quote, ending the Minneapolis Police Department.
Hey everyone, we need to organize our own, and no one else is coming to our aid.
Using social media, community organizers like Sam Gould brought huge crowds to the Powderhorn Neighborhood Park the first morning after protests began.
It's now up to the people to inform themselves and set the agenda of what a police-free future is.
School teacher Jessica Mueller.
If anything is going to happen to keep us safe and to keep us as a solid community, it's going to have to come up from within the community. So the last people that we feel safe with right now are the MPD who we pay.
I like to more specifically think about it as reimagining public safety.
Philippe Cunningham serves the city's 4th ward.
At the end of the day, we want to make sure that when anyone calls 911, that they have the most appropriate response to their emergency and crisis, and that they are being kept safe.
He says that response could be from a social worker, mental health professional, or armed cops when that's deemed appropriate, say a shooting or armed robbery.
All right, good morning, everyone.
The council plans to initiate a long process, including likely a referendum, to change the city's charter. That would allow it to shift some of the $193 million annual police department budget to community-based programs. Councilors say they want to address underlying problems like homelessness and other symptoms of poverty that drive crime and violence. Critics of the council's move say they are alarmed by the lack of details or time frame. Steve Kramer with the Downtown Business Association says it sends the wrong message to the economically vital companies and sports venues who want to reassure customers, employees, and fans that the downtown is safe.
There's no plan to make a plan, yet there's this very provocative headline out there, kind of a talking point, that's created a huge vacuum that people are filling with either their best aspirations or their worst fears.
Others worry about morale in the Minneapolis Police Department, troubled for years by officer-involved shootings and allegations of misconduct. 13 officers have either quit or are in the process of resigning since George Floyd's killing. Another group published its own open letter condemning the actions of their former colleague, Derek Chauvin.
99% of those police officers go to work every day with the right attitude and the right mindset.
Rich Stanek is a former Minneapolis cop, Republican state legislator, and former sheriff of Hennepin County, which includes the city.
They're being attacked from every angle. The elected officials, the residents themselves, others across the country whom they've never met. It's going to be hard to overcome or rebuild.
However, police officers enjoy significant protection from laws that allow wide latitude in the use of force, and powerful unions which have lobbied successfully for state laws against residency requirements. 93% of Minneapolis police officers live outside the city, and only a tiny fraction of the city's police officers who are brought up on misconduct charges face any discipline, and their disciplinary records are kept from public view.
So it's been very difficult to hold officers accountable, for the chief to fire officers that he or she finds problematic because of their behavior.
University of Minnesota sociologist Joshua Page says that behavior also reflects what he calls an entrenched warrior culture in American policing. But Page says the George Floyd case, vividly on video, has moved white American attitudes like none before it.
A look of impunity generated a lot of rage. I think white people, including myself, are being forced to see the things that people in certain communities have known.
That might bode well for reform in public safety approaches, he says. Still, the process will take time and won't be easy, even among the Powderhorn neighbors looking to rely more on each other and less on 911.
Most of the people of that 1,000 that came were white, and this neighborhood is not a white neighborhood.
Huda, who wanted only her first name used, said it is racially diverse and divided by class and different priorities.
To be honest, the very first things that people were talking about were property. And I was like, great, my apartment might burn down. But I'm also concerned for my own safety and for the safety of people who look like me. And I haven't heard a single one of you mention that.
These neighbors agree that rooting out ingrained biases will be a challenge. So too might be sustaining an entire community's interest in police reform amid historic events like a pandemic and a presidential election. For the PBS NewsHour, this is Fred DeSan Lazaro in Minneapolis.
Fred's reporting is a partnership with the Undertold Stories Project at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. President Trump is expected to sign an executive order tomorrow on policing that will focus on issues of training and information sharing. But administration officials said that it is not expected to address systemic racism in law enforcement.